I'm Dale Smith for Looney Politics, and this last week we had a lot of conversations about the qualifications of Freeland to be the new finance minister. Now, if we take out the concern trolling that was obviously sexist, we have some very interesting conceptions about what qualifies people for ministerial positions in this country. If we look at finance ministers, for example, for the last 50 years, the majority of them have been lawyers and not Bay Street bankers or any other kind of businessmen. And it's one of these things where we've started developing this notion that cabinet ministers need to come from professions that their ministry covers. For example, there's now an expectation that a health minister used to be a doctor, or a defense minister was once a soldier, but those can end up being problematic. Part of that is because it can subject the minister to essentially capture. And by capture, we mean that they become too closely aligned with the interests of the stakeholders and not necessarily of the broader picture. An example of capture would be regulatory capture, where a regulator is staffed with and is overly sympathetic to the industry in which it's supposed to be regulating, and therefore doesn't do an effective job of upholding rules. We do have regulators like that in this country. The other thing we need to remember is that with cabinet ministers, their real responsibilities have to do with management and accountability. And that means that they're really taking only high-level decisions, they're not micromanaging the day-to-day operations of their department, and those decisions are based on the advice that they get from the experts within their department. Now that's crucial because it's also about accountability. The minister who makes the high-level decisions then gets to be responsible for those decisions within Parliament. That's how our system works. It ensures that the civil service is nonpartisan and is shielded from political ramifications, meaning the minister takes that responsibility on as well. And that's important to have continuity and the ability for the department to provide essentially fearless advice to their ministers. So it's one of those situations where you don't actually need to have specific subject matter experience within your department in order to play that managerial and accountability role. You simply need to be able to be a good manager and to be able to follow through on the accountability for those decisions. And that's why some of this, essentially concern trolling for Freeland's credentials in the finance department are a bit overblown. She does have significant cabinet experience, and her previous role as a journalist in terms of being able to absorb and understand vast quantities of information, and more importantly, to be able to communicate that to her stakeholders and to the public is a bigger asset to her as a minister than Bay Street experience would be. And as we've seen, Bay Street experience didn't help Bill Morneau with his ability to communicate with his own stakeholders. For Looney Politics, I'm Dale Smith.